he was like, oh yeah, don't worry, this is not rocket science. Oh wait, actually it is. And so
Spiral Stories is like an integration of your passion.
and I realized that I did not enjoy being in the lab and researching as much.
It can be really difficult for the 2 or the 3 people to be on the same page.
Yes. I had this dream to work at Tesla as well, and so I did do an internship there.
The music video did not do so well, and I had like major losses.
Yeah, a lot of my time was sucked into that job, which was physically in person.
Hello everyone, welcome to today's episode of the Ramsha podcast. Our guest today is incredibly talented and innovative entrepreneur Rahul Dhiman, a UC Berkeley chemical engineer graduate. Rahul initially set to pursue a stable career but took a bold leap of faith into the world of storytelling and creativity. He co-produced, wrote, and acted in web series Upside Down. And then later on, he turned this journey into an opportunity, founding a full-service video production studio dedicated to showcasing stories of deep tech companies and founders. In this episode, we dive into Rahul's journey of navigating financial setbacks, embracing failures, and building a thriving enterprise. So if you are curious about entrepreneurship, storytelling, turning your setbacks into success, this episode is going to be packed with valuable insights. Stay tuned.
Wow, that was I appreciate the introduction. Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm doing very good. How about yourself? Thanks for having me.
I'm doing good. It's a pleasure having you. Just want to say something. When I did a lot of research about you and what you have done, and I could see a lot of myself in you. I was like, yes, I relate to you a lot, and I relate to everything you have done. I think it's not easy. It's not easy to do all those things, and we're gonna get into that. But before we talk about all of these things, please tell me about your childhood and your parents, your family. I think that's
Yeah, totally. So childhood-wise, I'll start at the very beginning. I was actually born, around here in the suburbs of Chicago, a suburb called Buffalo Grove.
okay.
And so I grew up there my entire life, went through elementary, middle, high school, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I was the only child in my family, but I did have a dog growing up, so that was a very, very big influence on my life. And I'd always been very focused academically as a kid.
Yeah.
I just was pretty good at math and science, somewhat stereotypically, and I played a lot of chess and all those kinds of things. But I never really enjoyed it too much. But I knew that was kind of what I was good at. I enjoyed watching films as a kid for sure. Like I grew up watching Bollywood films. I'd say I'd watch like for every 4 Bollywood films I'd watch like 1 Hollywood film. It's kind of like the ratio. So, and then being born in America, that was rare compared to my friends.
Yeah.
Most of my friends were not as into that culture as I was. So that was, I guess, something unique. And then just given my background, I was then applying to college, and that's when I was like, okay, I'm good at math, science. I don't know what kind of thing I want to do. And just by a process of elimination, because I was, at the time, I was somewhat passionate about like renewable energy and the climate and stuff like that. I ended up picking, chemical engineering, just by process of elimination, not by like any like, crazy intuition or passion. And that's what led me to UC Berkeley and college and all the other kinds of things. But Chicago born, and
And you're the only child.
yes, and only child.
Same.
Yes, so a lot of similarities. So yeah.
Do you like being the only child?
I get that question a lot, and I love it. I actually would. I wouldn't have it any other way. My parents asked me this when I was younger, and they kept asking me, and I said, for some reason, my answer was always that I'd want an older brother.
Yeah.
And then they're like, we can't really do anything about that, so we just kind of kept it as is. I don't know why I wanted one. I think I am very close with my older cousins, who are guys, and they were somewhat like brothers to me.
To you.
So I think that's probably where analyzing it now, that's probably where that answer came from. But I felt like I also wasn't really an only child because
You have a dog.
I had a dog. So that was my brother.
I heard that
So-
in your previous podcast.
Yes. So yeah, I mean, I had a brother technically, so that's that was kind of my sibling there.
I think you pursued chemical engineering because it's a more stable option, right? There's certain careers that are more stable, financially secure than others. And I think the reason maybe you pursued chemical engineering was because maybe you wanted a backup, right? That was one reason. But then you did not completely let go of your passions and you tried balancing the two, right? You tried balancing what would give you money along with what actually made you happy and give you that creative satisfaction. Am I right or am I wrong?
That is honestly perfectly right. Yeah, honestly, you're perfectly right on that.
Okay.
Actually, spot on. But all that happened over the course of a few years. All those realizations, and it took me many years to come to the conclusion that that was kind of what it was. I think the decision to go into chemical engineering, say when I was like going into freshman year after senior year of high school, was definitely that, this is a pretty stable choice. It's like kind of guaranteed you can get some type of job after 4 years, and then it would be decently paying compared to other majors you go through. So that was definitely something there. In terms of wanting to do something I was passionate about and creating time for that, that was something I figured out along the way later. Because when I went into studying engineering, I did not have this passion for filmmaking, storytelling, acting, all those kinds of things. I honestly was a little bit lost in the sense of like, I knew I was a very hardworking person,
Yeah.
but I felt like directionless, almost hopeless in the sense that like, I don't know where to direct it because it's like, whatever I do, I don't have any joy from it. And I think all my college years was trying to figure out actually even past my college years was trying to figure out how to direct my energy and passions.
So when you started your undergrad journey, you went with the mindset that okay, this is what I'll major in, or you went through those changes in majors? Because I changed my major like 15 times. That
Totally,
was me.
yeah.
Yeah.
I actually have this very vivid memory with one of my best friends from college, Ari. So I went in as chemical engineering, which was just through like process of elimination, because I just enjoyed thermodynamics as a subject in like AP chemistry.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed chemistry as like a science subject, and so chemical engineering was like the closest of those things. That's literally the only reason I picked that. Like I could have went with computer science, electrical engineering, a lot of other things. Like my dad was an electrical engineer, now he's a nuclear engineer, and so there was a lot of different avenues I could have went in choosing it, but that's how I went with the initial choice. As I was going through college, I did some research opportunities. So I researched at like Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. I researched at some, other types of places. And I realized that I did not enjoy being in the lab and researching as much.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, maybe I'm a little bit more business minded, but I still want to be in this field of like renewable energy and all that kind of stuff. So that's when I had this dream to work at Tesla as well. And so I did do an internship there for a bit. And that was a little bit more business related. I was more on the battery supply chain team. And I was like, I hated it much less. And so I kind of somewhat enjoyed it. I'm like, okay, maybe I'm on the right track. And that's when I was having this conversation with my friend Ari. And we were both deciding, maybe we should just change our major to, it was this program called IEOR, which is like Industrial Engineering and Operations Research. Basically, it's just like a more businessy version of engineering. And yeah, I remember, I think, going to my counselor, discussing the change to this, and just realizing that like I would have had to stay for an extra semester or two to like complete everything. And I was like, no, it's not worth it. So that kind of, I think I would have, if I were to go back in time, I probably would have, well, I don't even know if I would do that one, but I would have done that at least instead of chemical engineering. But I did not end up changing my major once, though. So
Are you happy with the... It's a very cliche question. Come on.
Yeah.
But okay, are you happy with where you are at the moment?
I'm
Be
very happy.
honest.
I honestly am very happy with where I am at the moment because, and to go further on the question, I think I'm going to also say I'm very happy that I did study engineering
Yeah.
in school because it definitely,
It pays you.
yes, but honestly, the other thing was like, I don't think I'll experience anything more difficult than like what chemi at Berkeley was
Oh
for me.
yeah.
Like, honestly, it was just, I thought high school was kind of hard or whatever, but honestly, college was really tough, especially that program. Like, people at Berkeley say that's arguably the hardest program at that school. Each program is different at each school. Each school has their own, like, tougher professors, stuff like that. And obviously it's debatable and people think their major is the hardest or whatever. But for me, it was extremely tough. And I think it gave me the confidence, especially when I got into filmmaking and like just other fields, that I was like, if we were able to do, engineering, then nothing else can be that much harder.
Yeah,
So it
nothing
gave me
beats
that,
that.
exactly. It gave me that mindset and confidence to do anything else. Without that, I would probably think other problems are almost impossible to solve or hard to solve. But since it's like that cliche joke where people say, like, one of our professors said this like before our midterm. I think it was a fluid dynamics midterm, or I honestly don't remember anything, but he was like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, this is not rocket science." Oh wait, actually it is. And so then it's kind of like that thing. So it gives you confidence for solving problems, which is the most important thing at the end of the day.
And I think because you went through such a tough major, and it was a lot of hard work, dedication, like you have mentioned, and an engineering degree is not easy. I can say that from experience.
Yeah.
So I think that also gave you confidence to actually create a web show, which is so impressive. How old were you when you
That's a good question.
created or when you started the process of creating Upside Down?
Yes, I actually vividly remember this was 2020 was when Yash, who I created the show with,
Yeah.
and I came up with the idea of Upside Brown, just as a concept. And so, how old was I? I was 21.
Wow,
Yeah, I think that math works out. 21 and a half or something like that.
that's so.
So I was in I was in college still. So I think I was like in my senior year-ish of college. And this was during COVID, like peak COVID. I actually don't know if this idea would have happened if it weren't for COVID.
Yeah.
I still wish COVID never happened, but it definitely gave me and just everyone, like, I guess, more time to sit with themselves and their thoughts. And so that's when, in that summer, we came up with the idea of Upside Brown. And then, yeah, that's when we figured out how to shoot a pilot. Then we had to reshoot it, do a full season, and it all started from when I was 21. So that's actually, I would also say, when my creative journey started, was when the idea of Upside Brown was
So
created.
around like 4 years back.
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, it'll be 4 years in the summer. So
And what inspired you to create Upside Down? Like a whole web show, which involves a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of investment. It's not easy at
Definitely.
all.
Definitely.
So what inspired you to take the step of creating a web show?
I think it was what inspired me and Yash to create the show was a couple things. One, just the essence of what the show was because we felt that there was not a lot of media, whether it be films or TV in Western media, that accurately depict how at least our upbringing was as Indian Americans. And there are shows out there, but we just did not feel that it represented how we grew up. For example, we grew up. At least we grew up, Yash and I, speaking a mix of Hindi and English at home, speaking English with our cousins, Hindi with our grandparents, and all these very subtle nuances that, most of the shows, they would just be like, oh, everyone's speaking English. Or, in India, it's everyone's speaking Hindi, which is how it is. It's accurate, which is fine. But, there's just like these subtle nuances as being someone from both worlds, which we felt was not depicted. So that was, from a creative sense, what drove us to create it. And then what drove us to create a full TV show, as opposed to what most people do, is maybe just shoot a pilot or do a short film, or the most ambitious people do like a feature film or something like that, right? Is because everyone told us we can't do it, and no one else was doing it. So we both had this mindset that, like, if you do something that other people are not willing to do, even if you mess up, you'll be in a league of your own. At least you're racing with yourself and like doing something new, even if you fail. And Yash and I both did not go to film school. I'm not really. I think film school is good for some people, and some people it's not as good. Just the way I know how I learn. I learn a lot by doing and, being in the field and just getting my hands dirty. I've also heard that from a lot of people that, to be a good filmmaker, you have to make films.
Exactly.
And so my mindset was like, let's just, instead of putting some money that we could towards like a degree at a film school, just put it towards a project where you know nothing about filmmaking and just treat it like a school, essentially.
No, and I honestly really appreciate that mindset because I see a lot of people putting in money towards boot camps, towards, higher degrees, and I see where they're coming from. But I think no classroom or no professor can teach you as much as just being there on set or like being present in person can. So that it was a very wise decision. So you worked with Yash, right? He was the co-producer. And usually, sometimes this happens that when you're working with another person, they have their own thought process, they have their own opinions, and it can be really difficult for the two or the three people to be on the same page and to, make something from start to finish. Did you face such challenges?
No, that's a great question. I think, we get this question a lot. Like usually when you have one director of something, it's a singular vision that drives the entire crew to create something. But in our case, we had, two co-creators. So two creative inputs, two people writing the script together, two people on set directing the vision of all those things. So it can definitely get complicated. I think I've actually known Yash since I was in second or first grade.
Wow.
Something like that, a very long time. And so we're also both very different people. And I think us knowing each other very well helped us understand the strengths of one another.
Yeah.
I think one really good thing that we did in any decision-making matrix that we had was there are certain times in creative directions that Yash felt very strong about something. And there are certain things I felt very strong about and things I really wanted. And let's say there was an angle that I wanted a character to take or a certain scene that I wanted in an episode. And I was like really, really passionate about having the scene. And Yash was like, for example, say, no, I think this scene's a good idea, but I think there are better ideas. But he's not as strongly convinced, if that makes sense, against it as I am for it. So then we would always go with whoever has a stronger intuition towards something to just trust that person and take that decision. Now, the only time that'll be complicated is if one person is strongly against something and the other is very strongly for it. And luckily for us, that rarely happened because we had like a shared vision going into it. So it was really just minor things that were just little disagreements. And those just open discussions. And a lot of times what happens is we created like a third option that was some type of blend of both of them that we both liked better.
Was Upside Brown self-funded or you guys had like brands you guys collaborated with?
Yeah, so Upside Brown was essentially fully self-funded. We did do a crowdfunding campaign. Okay. And, that raised about 15% of the total funds that we needed for the show. So nothing crazy, but it really helped with us, booking the location for the show and, some other costs that were very important. The rest of it was self-funded because I don't know if this is like a pessimistic view.
Yeah.
But I kind of operated on this assumption that no one is going to just give us money to make a TV show to like two guys who've never done anything before.
Right.
Because I've also talked to a lot of people, like whether they're in LA or New York, Chicago, who have been like pitching concepts for years and years. And at the end of the day, never actually make anything or do anything.
That's true.
And I knew that I didn't want that to be me. So we were just like, we both have full-time jobs in like decent fields. Yeah. And luckily, since two people are paying for it, the cost is 50%. So we were just like, let's just raise the rest of it ourselves,
and
put it in.
do it.
Yeah.
And don't overthink.
Exactly. And it goes to the mindset of like, we're not going to expect a monetary return in the short run.
Yeah.
It's just like our film school. And we're going to make like a lot of mistakes, but we're going to learn more from it than we are like putting it towards anything else. And I think when you go with that mindset, it's much better than going with it as if it was a business. Because if I were to want to start a business and make money, I wouldn't have done this.
Right.
So there's a lot of other things I could have started. So
I really like that mindset, and I think not many people think this way. Not many people have the courage to just go and just do whatever the hell they want to do, right? People
Yeah.
end up overthinking, and I am one of them now. And I think it takes a lot of courage and a lot of confidence to go ahead and just do it. Like you mentioned that you guys knew that this might not get that profit or revenue. That's like the ideal revenue or profit that most filmmakers expect.
Yeah.
And I know when we were talking, when we met last time, you mentioned that Upside Down was not a big monetary success, right? So
Correct. Yes.
how did you navigate that emotionally and mentally? Did it affect you, or you just perceived that as like a learning experience and you moved on from there?
100%. Yeah. The fact that, Upside Down wasn't like a, I guess profit making endeavor, at least season 1, since we had the mindset going in that it wouldn't be, I would have honestly been very surprised if we did make our full budget and more back just from people, purchasing the show or the show streaming on wherever it was. Yeah. I think since the mindset was that wasn't going to happen, I was pretty unfazed, if anything. I almost viewed anything that came in as like extra credit, because I think what we find more valuable was what we learned from the show, but even more so from that, whatever audience we've built and whatever brand we've built with the show, such that we can either use that to, power other projects that him and I individually do.
Yeah.
Or, parlay that into a season 2, or show investors and other producers that, okay, this is what we've been able to do with 1% of what a normal Hollywood TV show is. Imagine if you were to give us even 10% what we could do. Yeah. That's also one of the narratives we kind of have as well. And so I think since we were framed in the right perspective before even starting it, it wasn't really kind of an issue, at least on my end. So
no, that's I don't hear that often, and that's amazing mindset to have. So I think you have motivated me to share part of my story.
Yes.
I created a music video back in 2023. Invested around like 20 lakhs INR, which was a huge investment. Yeah. And I was like 21 at that time. And the music video did not do so well, and I had like major losses. And then I lost all the confidence to make another music video. I had a lot of self-doubt and fear, and I think from what you're saying now, I'm getting the courage to kind of go back and do something, because I feel that you just cannot hold on to your failures and stick to them for too long. Because if you do, then you're just gonna stay at that same place and you won't be able to move on from there.
Definitely, yeah. And then when you were making the music video, did you expect like a monetary return on it, a certain number? Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, I see. But I think as long as in this case you have shown the quality of the project. I've seen the music video. It is very nicely shot, and it looks very nice.
I've seen your web show too.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Thank you. So I mean, the quality that you've made just as like a portfolio piece can definitely lead into people paying you to do other music videos and stuff. Is like it's a great portfolio piece. So
that is really sweet of you to say.
Yeah.
Coming back to Upside Down, right? If you could go back and do one thing differently with the project, what would you do? It doesn't have to be 1, it can be 2, 3, but
for sure. There's one thing 100% is if we were to redo Upside Down, I would definitely want to have one decently big actor in the show, because that would have helped us market and pitch to like bigger distribution companies and investors a lot stronger and a lot better. The entire cast was pretty much, no names, not like first time actors, but not names that are like recognizable by a random person. And that really makes it tough to market when you're just going off the content itself. And so that is actually the number one thing I would have changed. And I honestly think if we did do that, there actually would have been a lot better, monetary, results from it. I think people also perceive the project to be of a different caliber just by having like one name that they recognize. Because honestly, if you look at the production quality of Upside Brown, it is objectively better than The Office in terms of what The Office looks like. But if you say that to just a random viewer who's not like really into cinema or like the details and stuff, they're gonna think you're crazy. Like there's no big names. There's all this like The Office is such a crazy show, like, and all that stuff. But if you just look at the lighting and things along those lines, it is objectively a little better. And that's only because obviously we made this show in the 2020s, and then the Office was like what 20 much earlier on.
It's not easy to do that with less funding and like
Yes.
when you're completely self-funding the project.
Exactly. But if we were able to say that, oh, we have this actor VJ Roz or somebody, I don't really know, in there, then people look past their intuition that this is an independent project, and they automatically have this lens that, oh, it's a professional project. So that's the one thing I would have changed.
So now I'm gonna get to my most favorite topic.
Okay.
You transitioning from Upside Brown to the Spiral Studio, right?
Yeah.
Another analysis.
Yes.
I'm gonna.
I'm sure you'll be right.
I hope so. I think what you did really smartly was Spiral Stories is like an integration of your passion and also, it brings that revenue and money, because let's face it, we need money to survive. We need money to fund our dreams. It is essential, and I think maybe Spiral Stories was a way for you to balance the two, which is why you're providing video production services to deep tech companies, which is a very interesting niche, and I would love to know about that. But is my analysis right?
No, yeah, that's 100%, because prior to the transition, how my life really looked was like from 8:30 a.m., not counting travel, but like from like you call 8 a.m. to like 6 p.m. I was working at a battery startup in person from Monday through Friday. And so that took up 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., travel home, have dinner, work out. It's like 9 p.m.
Doesn't leave you time for anything else.
Yeah. And I mean, I was 21, 22, 23. So then from 9 p.m. to midnight, I would work with Yash on writing the script or editing. We edited the show ourselves, like editing the show, whether it was the post-production time or casting or whatever it was. But that's not that sustainable for like an entire lifetime. So yeah, a lot of my time was sucked into that job, which was physically in person. I think things would have been different if I had a chill remote job or something. Maybe I could have kept that. But I've always wanted to live a life where, I was time, location, and like financially independent. That's kind of one of my, I guess, big goals to be, just generally in life. And I always had an entrepreneurial side to me that I've been itching to do.
Yeah.
And Upside Brown kind of gave me a part of that, but I was able to go in with it without worrying about making money, which is like the whole point of entrepreneurship. So I don't know if that counts. But I've always wanted to have my own actual business that created revenue. And so it got me thinking like, okay, I have this degree in engineering. I work in like this battery EV type of space. Yeah. And then I have video production experience. Is there a way to like
combine the two?
Yeah, exactly. And if you think that's essentially what Spiral is. I was actually going to do a video for my company because they found out they knew I was making TV shows and all this stuff. Yeah. And so they asked me to just do some like video stuff for them for some of their products. And then it dawned on me that a lot of these technologies, in that case it was battery technology, but just deep tech as a whole, which deep tech for a lot of people don't know what that is, but it's really physical technologies that are like transforming the world is kind of how you looked at it.
Focused niche. I was
Very
like, how
focused.
do you identify?
Yeah. So it includes like, biotech, robotics, AI, energy, all those kinds of things. And all those things are very, very technical that average people won't be able to kind of just understand by looking at it, especially if you have a very specific product. Yeah. And so I felt there was a niche here for someone who understands the technology, but also understands storytelling to be able to get the essence of what the engineers and the innovators are trying to convey to the audience in an entertaining or informational way. And so I was like, okay, this could be it. And so that's kind of how the idea of Spiral Studios kind of
That's
came to
awesome.
fruition. And yeah, obviously, like you said, right? Companies have money to pay for content, and it makes sense because it drives them benefits as well, as opposed to narrative stuff, which is a little tougher to consistently make revenue on.
Right. And deep tech, so you do content production, video production for deep tech clients, right? That's a very focused niche. And I was thinking like how did you like what research and insights went towards identifying that okay, this is what I would like to focus on. And I think you have a co-founder
Yes.
also, right?
Yeah. So actually, it's actually a great co-founder story. I love telling it. This was December 2023 when I was pretty much my last month at my full-time job when I was going to leave and just start this company. At that time, I was going to start my own company all by myself.
Yeah.
And the name was called Cinetech Productions.
Cinetech.
So it's like cinematic tech. It's a very on the nose type of name, but I was like, whatever. And so at that point, my niche and target was actually just technology companies and videos. It was more normal. It was a bit more like just technology companies and videos, which is still definitely a very small niche. And then I was like, okay, I always wanted to go to Spain, so I just did a solo trip to Spain, very unrelated. So I was in Spain for about 2 weeks.
I think solo trips help with like self-discovery and
Yeah. Have you been on one?
why
No. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, yeah. I will say yes. They definitely do, and that's kind of I've always been wanting to go to Spain.
My dreams.
Yeah. Exactly. It was pretty much Zindagi Na Milegi Dobara, but just myself. And yeah, I think it was a 9-day trip or so. And I just went to Madrid and Barcelona, and I stayed in these social hostels where you just meet a bunch of other solo travelers.
Yeah.
And on the second half of my trip, when I was in Barcelona, I met my business partner, who's my now business partner, Neve. And so we were just talking. Eventually, like, oh, what do you do for work? Came up and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he told me that he just started this company where he does video production for deep tech companies. And I thought that was insane because the odds of me meeting him in Spain when he's from America, I'm from America, and we both started the exact same business at the same time is like I don't really know what percent odds that is, but probably like 0.0001%. And yeah, he was just very passionate about deep tech specifically, and he knew people in the space and had like a pulse on it. And technically the industry I worked on is within deep tech, like battery technologies, and so eventually we just partnered together and we're like, yeah, let's do it.
No, that is really interesting, and I think you have certain skill set that you bring in, right? A writer, actor, a storyteller, most importantly, and I think those skill sets are really important, and I'm sure they must have helped you while you were building the Spiral Studio, right? But how do you and your co-founder, how do you guys divide responsibilities to make sure that both of you guys are working in a positive direction, and everything is getting efficiently done and there are no conflicts of interest?
Yes. No, that's a good question. I think for any, business partnership, any kind of partnership, it's important to understand what each person's strengths and weaknesses are and how that can be kind of synergistic to the entire system, you call it, or entire business, whatever it is. Definitely in the beginning, it was just figuring out who's kind of good at what. So when we were building the company together, we would both be on all the sales calls together. We would both be, building whatever the website together. We would both be making the demo reel together. We would both be directing shoots together, just to kind of see and how each other works. What is his strengths? What are my strengths? And things along those lines. But eventually, to create a more efficient system, you want to delegate certain tasks to one person and certain things to another. So for example, in Spiral, right? And this even goes with Upside Brown with me and Yash. We both have different skills that things we're better at. For Spiral, right? So Neve is a lot more like electric, energetic, exciting. It's much more exciting than I am. So he's a lot better on sales calls and just speaking with customers and things along those lines. I'm a lot more operational and like logical and things along those lines. So I did a lot of the operational work. So I would do a lot of project management internally, like working with the editors, just making sure the client is up to date with deliverables, just updating our like taxes and accounting, stuff like that. I hate it. I actually don't like it. I actually don't like that I have to do that for like Upside Brown and also Spiral, but it's fine. But yeah, you figure out the strengths of one another, and kind of delegate accordingly. But that definitely takes time and understanding your business partner.
It helps if you know the other person.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and that's why I think like people say, yeah, your business partner, like you spend the most time with them, whether it's virtual or not. Like you should know them very, very well, and you are going to be going through like hardships, good times, bad times. So you're going to see them at like their worst state, their best state. So you do get to know them pretty well.
Sounds
so it doesn't end up
much
working.
like being in a relationship.
It pretty much is. Yeah, I mean, like even like in the like not modern day, but general life, like when you go to work from like 9 to 5, and then you see your wife or whatever at home, you technically are spending more time at work. So it's like it is essentially kind of like that, especially when you're starting a company, just 2 people. It's even more intimate in that sense. So
So I want to backtrack a bit, right? And I want to talk about the client outreach. I feel that when you're like building an agency or something like this, and you're outreaching to clients, it can be difficult, to do that, especially if it's like your first client, because again, you have to show them that yes, you can, whatever you're providing them will give that sense of value, and there's gonna be an ROI, right? How did both of you, and he's not here, so you have to answer. How did you approach your first client, and how difficult was it?
Definitely. That's actually a great question, because I actually think, let's just say starting any type of agency, the hardest thing is getting your first client, your second client, and like the very beginning, and having that be consistent, because honestly, it can take like 2 to 3 months to get your first client. It could take longer, honestly. And a lot of people, I think, do give up before they reach that point. But the real thing is, once you have a few clients, it only gets easier and easier. So it's very important to push through to get that first client, however it is. And going to your point, like it is tough to do outreach. I think a lot of people are. You can even see it when you. I'll wait a bit, but. Yeah, so in terms of outreach, you make a good point that it's not very easy, because you even see on LinkedIn and things like that, or you might even receive outreaches yourself. Like you might find a lot of them cheesy when you get like just a random automated like cold email from like some random company. And you definitely don't want to come off as that. So you definitely want to come off as someone or a company that's authentic and, all those kinds of things. But what I think in the world where a lot of things are being automated, and just AI is being used to create connections and things like that, being human and having that human touch, I think, becomes even more important and like more valuable. So for example, at Spiral, we really valued like events, like in-person events. Like we would literally just on our own money just fly to events in SF LA where all these companies are, and just walk around and talk to people.
So networking.
In that sense. But even more than that is a level up, which we realized was actually better, is providing value to your audience, whoever that is. And so how that happens nowadays, right, is a lot of companies make content, like organic content that is valuable to whoever they're reaching out to, and then people come to them. So that's one really good avenue to do that. How we did it was we actually gave free workshops, like storytelling workshops at events, whether that be in SF, LA, wherever it is, and somehow providing value to the people at the event. And the goal was really to build the deep tech ecosystem, because that's what we're really passionate about at the end of the day, and that's kind of how you get your name out, and people can recognize Neve's face or Rahul's face, with the company, and if they ever need a video, then they kind of know, who to come to, or that we are a resource, as opposed to no one wants to see like a cold email being like, "Hi, we are Spiral. Do you want a video?" best.
Yeah,
Like no
they're
one's gonna
ignore
it's
it.
not gonna
Yeah.
So it also like you cringe by doing it. Like if you're doing a certain like outreach tactic and you're like cringing at yourself doing it, you probably shouldn't like yeah, I mean but there's a caveat to that. I think like when it comes to for example like making content or whatever it is, people do cringe in making that. So it's interesting. There is a difference between cringing where you feel it's inauthentic and then cringing just because like I don't know, maybe you're not comfortable with like how you feel internally. So I think there is a little caveat, but you should lean into towards what avenue of outreach makes you the most excited and the most natural to start out with.
So let me backtrack a bit, right? You mentioned that okay, one way to attract the right client base is attending like different events, and giving them like a free storytelling workshop or any kind of workshop, depending on what your service is like. But what are some of the other ways to do outreach? Let's say if you cannot go in person
Totally.
and attend those events.
100%. I think, yeah, the other way is, I think there's really 4 real main ways to do it.
Okay.
It's outreach. So then through outreach, it can be warm outreach and then cold outreach.
Okay.
So when starting out, I actually recommend doing warm outreach.
What is a warm?
Warm outreach meaning, so say you already have your personal network. So you have like 500 followers on LinkedIn, Instagram, or whatever it is. Well, let's say your target, let's not even talk about Spiral. Let's say you're like a gym fitness trainer, personal trainer, and that's your business. And you want to get your first client. The first thing you should do is reach out to all your friends to be like, hey, do you know anyone who might be interested in like a personal training session? Because then they can refer you to somebody who they may know, all these 500 people, 200 people, 10 people, whoever it is. And then if somebody's friend is referring you to them, they're going to be much more likely to like speak with you and then actually feel that trust. So I think warm outreach is the best thing to do to get your first number 1 client.
Okay.
And that's much easier to do when you're just, obviously when it's like something more general, like working out, or like if you're selling cookies or whatever, as opposed to like if you're doing something for like only corporations. But at the end of the day, you probably know somebody who works at a company who knows the marketing head or something like that.
Yeah.
So using that same logic of starting out with warm one-to-one outreach and making it very personalized and like just grinding through that is probably the best way to start it. And then after that, you can kind of figure out a more scalable other avenue to do it, whether it's content or events or something.
So what I learned from this is first you reach out to people who are within your network, people that you know,
Yeah.
right? And then through them you connect with a larger network.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right? Because
And-
these people know you and
Exactly. And then also at that point, after like 3 months, 6 months, you'll build your portfolio as well. And I think that'll unlock a whole new level of like success. Because once you've done like 4 or 5 different, say for us, it's videos. Say for the gym case, it's like you have 4 or 5 clients. They'll all tell their friends. Or you can post like a quote on a testimonial on your website of like the results that you got from it. That's going to open like a whole nother level of like trust. Because when a client comes to you and is considering to do business with you, they're going to check your website or your previous work. And once you have all that on your website, then that just increases the likelihood that success happens as well. So it is honestly exponential once you start. Like the hardest thing is those first 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is. It's a different time rate, but
no, I'm learning a lot. I'm taking notes literally.
okay. Live fitness.
So, last few questions, right? Let's get more into the practical. Let's go more deep into it, right? For aspiring content creators, entrepreneurs, what advice would you give them when it comes to balancing between like their passions and money, basically?
I do firmly believe that like, you know, practicality is actually pretty underrated when pursuing your passions or just life in general.
Right.
I think you need to be in a space where you're not like just financially unstable and just worrying about where your next check or meal is going to come in an extreme kind of case. Because one, on the creative side, I don't think that's the best way to live in general, but I also don't think that's the best like base you want to be from to foster creativity. I think you want to find a way to be, you know, financially stable and then build something on the side slowly until that side hustle turns into your full-time thing,
Yeah.
which is a very common thing people do, right? They have a full-time job, they build something on the side, test it out to see if they even like it. A lot of times what happens is like you think you want to start your own business, but then you realize that, oh, I have to find my own clients. I have to file all these taxes. I have to, if I go on vacation, all my revenue goes on vacation, right? So it's not really as amazing as it always seems for everyone. For some reasons, for some people it is. But, just test it out while you have whatever your normal day job is or whatever it is to see if that's even what you like. Even on the creative side, if you're making like if we were making Upside Brown, I very well might have been like, I don't want to do this again. And if I had just like left everything and just jumped into it, I would be screwed, to be honest.
No, that's a very practical way of looking at it, and a few lessons that I derived from this whole podcast. Number one, while you're doing your full-time job, right? Like whatever is paying you, you do that, but then also find time to work on your passion projects. And I think that's a great way for you to see if you're in the first case, if you're even interested in pursuing those full-time.
Exactly.
Right. And then like I feel this I feel I have this opinion, I could be wrong, but I think creating a business, creating an agency is not for everyone.
Yes. For sure.
Like some people are just happy with being in their 9 to 5, which is also fine, and some people are into starting their own venture, exploring entrepreneurship. So you really have to see what aligns with your life and your goals. And one last thing that I would like to say, I've been following you on Instagram. I see your post, and I think your father, like both your parents, have a very significant part in behind your
the scenes.
confidence, your success. I find that to be very cool because I don't find such like cases often. I love the way they like support you and encourage you. How big of a hand they have had in your whole journey?
I honestly think my family, my parents have been like the backbone of everything I've ever done. I think ever since I was a kid, they've always urged me to do whatever I wanted to do. And supported me in kind of everything. I think all the confusions I had of like what I want to do with life were all just because I didn't know what I wanted. I never had to worry about like, if I do this, what will they think? Which a lot of my friends, look, like all that stuff. Like I never had to worry about that. Sure, there's like societal stuff, but in terms of like family and my parents, it was always like the opposite. So that was just something from a mental and emotional state, something that I've been very blessed with and not had to worry about. So I think that has been, tremendous. And they're just very excited. It's not even like they're like, oh, do whatever you want. They're actually very excited for what I'm doing. So that's like even better. So, yeah.
No, that's awesome. I think more than financial support, it's the mental and emotional support that we need from our families. And I'm glad you have that. Thank you so much for your time. I think this was a brilliant episode because it was a mix of your emotional journey as well as a lot of practical guidance and advice. And I'm sure like the audience will find a lot of value from this episode. Thanks for being part of this. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is an exciting podcast and excited to see all the other guests and what you do with it.
Thank you. Means a lot.